The Vox Markets Podcast with Justin Waite. Nothing in this podcast is intended as investment advice, and the people in this podcast may hold positions in the stocks they talk about. Do not buy anything based solely on a tip or recommendation. Please do your own research.
Welcome to the podcast on Wednesday, the 14th of October, 2020. On the podcast today, John Meyer, mining analyst and partner at SP Anglo, talks about the IMF's revised economic forecast and covers news from Anglo Asian Mining, Orosur Mining and ScotGold Resources. Plus, Glen Goodman, former ITV News Business correspondent and now the author of The Crypto Trader, covers this week's Bitcoin news. And, as always, at the end of the podcast, I have two lists for you. The top 5 most followed companies on Vox Markets in the last 24 hours and the top 5 most liked RNSs too. By the way, you can see both these lists at voxmarkets.co.uk, where you can check out lots of other content. There's articles there on Union Jack Oil, on KR1. Yeah, KR1 made a decent profit there. On Chromec, check that out. And also, of course, our COVID-19 index is there. 4D Pharma is biggest riser there, 11% today. Biggest faller is Biotrol, down 5.2% to 7.2 pence. Check that out at voxmarkets.co.uk.
Vox Markets is an online community of investors that runs a free mobile and desktop platform that allows you to track news and updates about any UK-listed company, offering RNS push notifications, detailed charts, pricing data, and much more. Find out more at voxmarkets.co.uk/app.
And joining me on the podcast right now is John Meyer, mining analyst and partner at SP Anglo. And John, you're back in the office, are you?
I am, certainly.
I thought they were telling people not to go back to the office. Well, I don't know where they are now. Are they saying go back, or are they saying stay out of the office? It's almost like you get on the bus to go and they say, don't go to the office. What? You just told me to go to the office. No, come out, don't. So you don't know, from day to day, you don't know where we are. But yeah, you decided that that's a thing now? You're going to do that once a week, or what's happening?
We're doing a few days every other week. Keep the numbers down, but get the team together. Yeah. Team cohesion, it's all good things. See what remind ourselves what everybody looks like, etc., etc.
I think they change the rules so often now, the government. I think people just use common sense. That's it. Just ignore what the government is saying. Use common sense. I think that the face, space, and hands is very good. Just remember those things. Mask in your face. Wash your hands, keep a distance, and use a bit of common sense, And because I think some of the other policies the government are bringing in, making it worse. The 10 p.m. thing. Do you see Liverpool last night? The people dancing in the streets, jumping on each other. That's not going to help, is it? So I think there's certain things that don't make any common sense. So common sense, I think, is the way forward, isn't it?
It is, because we had a few people who'd been skiing and brought the virus back early on in the lockdown, or before the lockdown.
You said they brought it back there, like it was something to declare.
And we know they had the virus, but we know that only a couple of other guys in the office actually caught it, and maybe caught it from them or from elsewhere. So we know that the precautions that one takes, the hand washing, the sort of distancing type stuff, does actually work. And we're advised by Vadim Alexandre, who is our healthcare analyst, and I think as a result of that, we've been able to manage the situation very well.
Yeah, so this is interesting, because in your office, how many guys tested positive? They didn't know that. They were asymptomatic, weren't they? 5.
So we had at least 2 or 3 who came back from skiing who definitely had it. I was actually had a coffee sitting right opposite a client who also had it, because he was tested positive a week later, but the rest of us haven't had it. So it goes to show that actually the procedures work.
Yeah, but did you say that they know they had it, or were they asymptomatic?
They didn't know they had it at the time, but they definitely came.
How old are the guys?
50, 65.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah. That's interesting, because it seems like now that it's not as I'm starting to think that some of the time it's not as bad as we think, because unless you have an underlying health condition, of course. But I mean, most people you can discount Trump, even though he's obese and he's over 70. He had 7 doctors pretty much, so or 10 doctors, so and had the medication. But very interesting actually, the medication he's had, the trial, the drugs he took from Eli Lilly. That trial is now on pause. They paused it yesterday. because there's thrown up an issue with one of the guys there being tested, and they have to pause it to examine the figures. So Trump didn't affect Trump then. Well,
maybe they're worried.
Maybe it did affect him.
Trump was looking a little bit orange at his last convention.
Yeah, but I think that's down to him just being a bit over enthusiastic with tan, the fake tan. Right, there's almost like saying let's make myself look more healthy than I went in, and so he just looked more orange. Okay, so. Why not in your email newsletter? We'll sign up for this if you're a resource fan and a fan of macro. John's SP Angel Morning View, and you've got there about the IMF. I noticed a forecast shallower recession amid $12 trillion stimulus. So it's going to be shallower, but it's going to last a bit longer. Is that right?
Yes, and the IMF, I don't know if they're quoting our figures, but they're certainly quoting very similar figures to the numbers that we added up from stimulus packages some months ago, and we got so bored of putting those numbers out that we stopped doing it. Yeah. And actually, the policymakers have also stopped adding to stimulus in recent months, although we're expecting the US to add a meaningful extra package at some point. Probably before the election, but who knows? Depends on how well that suits Mr. Trump. But the IMF do see a contraction of 4.4% in 2020. That's not so bad actually. Predictions were worse previously. And what's very interesting is the big increase in trade flows in and out of China. Imports up 13%, exports up 9.9% in August. So those numbers going very well. Part of that's because China's having to buy in an awful lot of food at the moment because of all of the flooding along the Yangtze and the destruction of the rice paddies and other fields that they have along the river there. And that's really how they feed China through a lot of the fields along the Yangtze River. And part of the reason for building the Three Gorges Dam was to try and stop the flooding. But it goes to show that the dam either wasn't big enough or just not effective enough. And as a very learned and wise agronomist said to me the other day, he said, flooding is almost always man-made. It's man-made things that create flooding. So China is largely responsible for its own problems there, and as a result, it's having to buy billions of dollars worth of foodstuffs from around the world. And I noticed the Chinese central bank allowed the renminbi, or yuan, because the Chinese currency has two names, to actually rise the other day, which caused an interesting, some raised eyebrows in forex markets. And I think they will, as they buy more and more food, they'll probably allow their currency to appreciate while they're doing that, and then probably they'll drop the currency again to help their exports when they finish.
Yeah. But the thing about IMF and forecasting is very hard because you don't know certain things. Accelerate exponentially, and the momentum gets behind something, and so they basically expand faster than your spreadsheet allows for, or they can not take off. Like for example, how do they know what the growth is going to be like if there's a problem with the clinical trials of COVID? Because already now there are 3 companies being paused in America. Like I said, there's J&J, which had 60,000 people in their trial, which is massive, of course. You're going to have one person, of course, throwing up something. You've got AstraZeneca in America. Everywhere else, they've restarted their trial. And then you've got Eli Lilly as well. So it's hard to forecast, isn't it? Because nothing runs smoothly. Like say, even the stock market will start to rally and have a pullback. I remember the great financial crash. There's a couple of dips that didn't happen for a while, so everyone thought, we're on the up here, and then all of a sudden, a couple of years later, you had a big dip. I think 2011, then 2014, another dip, and so it's never smooth. So forecasting, I wouldn't read a lot into it, would you? It's very hard to do, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and some people are clearly better at it than others. The way I would say is, look, is the risk more on the upside or the downside, and you orientate your investment strategy towards how you see the balance of risk, and that's a strategy I think that works very well in the stock market, and also used to work very well in fruit machines.
Yeah, same thing. That's pretty much on aim anyway. Okay, let's look at some individual companies and news out. Start off in the alphabetical order then, John. AAZ, which is Anglo Asian Mining. What's happening there at the moment?
Well, the stock price hasn't gone up in the way that many gold companies have gone up. they are reviewing their production guidance at the moment, because there is this conflict going on in the disputed territories between Armenia and Azerbaijan. I've actually been into those disputed territories in the past. Very poor place, unfortunately, and quite a sad area. But Armenia's been filling it with people in the way that Israel was filling the West Bank. And the Azerbaijanis are not overly impressed by that. I'm not sure how the conflict started. There's often been a bit of a skirmish going on up there. And unfortunately, there was some bombing. They bombed the town of Ganja, which is somewhat south of the disputed territory. So somebody bombed a town that was not even in the disputed territories, and that's an escalation of the conflict. And that town is on the way to Anglo-Asian's Gedebek mine, and I think as a result of that, there may be a little bit of disruption to the gold mine. I don't actually see the gold mine is under threat. I think it's quite a long way away. Well, it is quite a long way away from the conflict and the zone, but there's always potential for a bit more disruption. And as I say, I think that's held back the valuation of Anglo-Asian mining, because whilst the gold price has gone up and everybody's margins have taken off, Anglo-Asian is sort of a bit left behind, which is a bit of a shame, because it's a great company.
Yeah. Well, maybe keep an eye on that skirmish, that war, whatever it is. I don't know but if that stopped, the ceasefire. I know Russia tried to negotiate a ceasefire. It lasted less than 24 hours recently, but if they're more successful, then maybe the share price will rally there and be valued more like its peers. Next is OMI, Orosur, Meyer. I don't know. I've seen them mentioned on social media a little bit. A bit of interest there from people. You can't tell how much interest is being garnered by a company, because they get some people just retweet everything with that ticker attached. So you don't know if it's one person doing the ramping or several. But what's happening there at OMI?
It's an interesting company. It was Uruguay Minerals. The old Uruguay gold mine finished. They spent a couple of years tidying up loose ends in relation to that. All the Uruguay stuff is gone. They're now focused on the Anza gold project in Colombia. That's quite close to something really rather large in Colombia. A recent discovery and new mine up there. And Newmont, who were a 50-50 joint venture partner, have sold their stake, or agreed to sell their stake, to Agnico Eagle. And Orosur have been paid $650,000 as a first payment from Agnico's local subsidiary for exploration on that project. So it's a nice little project. I think Orosur is also under new management. A chap called Brad George has gone in there. I think he's shaking things up. I think the exploration will start to move a bit quicker now. It's all going a bit slow while Newmont acquired Gold Corp, and that Newmont had its hands full, so didn't really want to advance anything else. But the interesting thing is Newmont still retained itself an anti-embarrassment interest in the project, so it still thinks it's got potential to become something really rather large, and it's in an area where quite big gold discoveries have been made. So we know that Anza's quite an interesting project, and there is potential there. And I think there's some other things that are quite likely to happen at Orosur to make it a more interesting business for small investors.
I see why it's garnered some interest there, because and the stock price has gone berserk in the last few days, hasn't it? It's gone from literally, you could have bought this pretty much on the 1st of October, 1st of this month, at around about sort of 6 pence. It's now 24 pence. So it's a good return if you'd got in there when the volume started kicking off, because that's gone mad. And in fact, it's even up today a little bit, but it shot up from 6 pence to what was the close there? Closed at 15 pence in 2 days. It doubled in 2 days. So, yeah, wow. That's why there's some heat around it, I suppose. Cool. And finally, ScotGold. They raised some money, John. What's happening there?
They're just accelerating their phase 2 expansion. They're going into production in November, so that's imminent. Clearly, the gold price rise is great for them, very well timed. And because it's Scottish gold, they've got every Scottish jeweller is after this production. So they will sell the gold for decent premium. So it's not just going to be the gold price on the screen. It's going to be something more than that, and possibly quite a big premium there for the gold. I don't want to guess at that number yet. So, but it's a very popular stock. People say there's not a lot of liquidity in it, but that's because the people who own the stock don't want to sell it. It's as simple as that. But I think it's suitable for small investors because it's a nice business and the cash flow will be coming through quite soon.
So do you know how much they'll be generating? Because already it's valued at 55 million. What do you reckon?
Well, if we look at a $1,400 gold price and the current currency rate with the US dollar and sterling, then we get an NPV of just shy of £100 million. So that's. I think there's, I see value in it, and it's not just the value there, but there's be further value to come from exploration, hopefully in the next few years, and just the fact that it's in Scotland, I think it's going to get a premium valuation. Right.
The share price has come off a little bit. It went 160 recently. That's kind of 117. So yeah, and like I said, it's starting to rise nicely. Previously, the last few months before this drop off a little bit, but maybe the momentum will return. Who knows? I mean, gold is where is gold at the moment price wise? I've looked at it for a little bit. It's come back a little bit, isn't it? But where we been? Trying to find the gold. Just shy of 1900, but it did top out pretty much at 2075 or there, so it's back about it dropped $200, but okay, it'll have another go though, I think, won't it? It'll go above there again, 2000 again.
I think so. Gold is consolidating for the time being. I think it's probably drop a little bit more before the big players come back in again. But I do see another opportunity for gold to test $2,000 an ounce. And I think probably if and when the US announces further stimulus, there's still quite a lot of uncertainty in investors' minds about the global economy and the ongoing issues around COVID. I mean, it may be that we get a different strain of COVID-19, or shall we say we might get COVID-20 or COVID-21 next year. And it is possible we may be having to live with this for much longer than we realise. And that's not me talking. That's me reflecting the words of somebody who works with viruses on a regular basis in a lab in Oxford. So look, I don't want to depress everybody in the world.
No, I think even the head of the vaccine task force in the UK. I can't think of her name now, but she came out and said, listen, the first round of vaccines, we're lucky if they'll be sort of 50% accurate, effective, I mean. But that's fine because, of course, as long as you sort of, you've got the doses up. But again, it's going to take till July next year, they reckon, the guy from Oxford said, didn't he, before we sort of start mass vaccinating people with an effective dose, So it'll be a slow... Do you know, just when life is like that, isn't it? Just when you thought Brexit was going to stay down, we couldn't handle Brexit anymore. Coronavirus came along, sick to death of that. And we still got Brexit at the end of this year as well. You think, it's never ending. Do you know what? I know what it's like to be one of those hamsters in those little wheels in a cage, it's nonsense.
Well, you're right, because... They on the BBC News last night, there was a lot of talk about the virus, and then they gave about 1 minute to Brexit. But actually, that 1 minute felt like a welcome break.
No, when Brexit is a welcome break, you're having a hard time of it. I'm just sick of it. Anyway, lovely. Let's all buy gold. Cheers, John. Thanks for that, and we'll speak you next weeky.
Thank you.
The Vox Markets Podcast with Justin Waite.
And joining me on the podcast right now is Glen Goodman. He's the crypto trader, the author of that book, and he also trades crypto. He's not just an author, he just, there's someone I had on the podcast a while back then, written a book, right, about investing in it. They weren't an investor. That was very odd.
You do come across those people sometimes. Yeah. I've met a number of those as well. And there are quite a lot of crypto trainers, the people who train people who don't trade themselves either.
I know. I understand that. The people who do courses, right, on how to do it, I think, well, why aren't you just doing it yourself? Just do it yourself, It's like, anyway, so you do it and...
I do it.
But what's going to happen now? So I heard that somebody there wasn't much of a movement because obviously Britain's a small market, I suppose. But I did read that news recently about Bitcoin being banned in some form. So what's the deal? What's being banned? Bitcoin's not banned, is it? Or what?
Not Bitcoin itself, no, but this still sucks. This sucks a lot. The FCA, Financial Conduct Authority, has banned the sale of crypto derivatives to retail consumers. By crypto derivatives, they mean things like contracts for difference, CFDs, spread bets as well. So all the stuff that I have happily traded, things like Bitcoin and Ethereum and so on, that I've traded on platforms like IG.com, CMC Markets, those kind of... There are a whole bunch of them in the UK, aren't there? eToro. All of those things are now banned. So the platforms aren't allowed to offer crypto-related products to any of their customers, which is really, really annoying for British people and somewhat counterproductive as far as I'm concerned, because it pushes people into the arms of the unscrupulous, unregulated platforms, the kind of platforms that I often use, the ones based outside Europe with very little regulation that offer huge amounts of margin and leverage and, allow you, if you don't know what you're doing, to get into all kinds of trouble. Whereas the UK and Europe-based platforms are much more strictly regulated. They had a very strict cap on the amount of leverage that was allowed to be used in crypto derivatives related trades. So, for example, if you're on IG.com and you wanted to trade Bitcoin, they would let you borrow money, as they do with all of the products that they offer. If you're trading, say, the FTSE 100 on IG.com, you put down a certain amount of money and they basically lend you the rest automatically. That's the way the platform works. And that's actually one of the ways they make their money. It's by lending you a bunch of money and you pay them interest on it. And so your bet on the direction of the FTSE 100 ends up being a lot larger in size than the initial amount of money or margin that you put down. Right? But there was a strict limit on this as far as crypto was concerned. So with Bitcoin, the FCA had said you're only allowed to offer double the initial sum to people, which is far, far less leverage than they offer on most of their other products like the FTSE 100 or individual shares or anything. So it was already the risk was quite tightly delineated. But now, because the FCA hates crypto so much, it's decided to ban these products altogether to consumers. But as you quite rightly pointed out, this is not an actual complete ban on Bitcoin, Ether or Ripple or any other cryptos themselves, because the interesting thing is that the FCA doesn't actually regulate cryptocurrencies themselves. It only regulates derivatives that are based on the prices of cryptocurrencies. So the actual cryptos themselves, like Bitcoin and Ethereum, you can still buy and sell them through legitimate platforms. You can actually buy and sell them through eToro, for example, because they offer the actual cryptos themselves, not just the CFDs and the spread bets that are based on the cryptos. Does that make sense?
I wasn't listening, yes.
Well, anyway, the point is...
No, I think it's good news. But the thing is, why should people go to unregulated platforms? Just stop dealing in it. It's all these fairy dust currencies. They're ridiculous. Some of them there one day, not the next. You can't use them for anything. What's the point?
All right, what about Bitcoin itself, though?
Yeah, get rid of that.
That is
get rid of that.
In this.
Yeah, get rid of it.
Get rid of it. Get rid of all cryptos. You were like a massive crypto bull about a year ago.
I know. I've seen the light, though, haven't I? I'm now enlightened. I realise it's just a massive Ponzi scheme, isn't it? Let's be honest.
That's like, look. We've talked about this before. You can say that with anything.
You can.
Gold is a massive Ponzi
scheme. Gold is useful.
It's just a shiny metal. It's not useful at all. It's just a shiny metal that people have decided
hang on a sec.
desirable because of the colour and the feel of it.
Hang on a sec. Yes. There's lots of people who love to wear, gold jewellery, and they have it at weddings. In India, it's very popular. It's everywhere.
Fashion. It could go out of fashion, and nobody could want it.
It's been in fashion for how many years now?
On and off. It's not all. It goes through its little phases.
No. You tell someone getting married in India that gold is out of fashion now. They won't believe you. They'll just buy it gold. And,
but things are changing in India. India has become culturally highly westernized. The middle class. Look at how the middle classes dress in India and the kind of things that they watch. And everybody in the world is all homogenized.
And gold is at an all-time high, pretty much. I rest my case.
Big gold chains. The young Indian middle classes. They're not wearing enormous gold bangles and jewellery, are they?
Yes, they are. They are. Listen, you are more likely to see people wearing gold in an Indian wedding than you are to see them wearing Bitcoin on their neck.
That I'll grant you that much. Yeah.
Let's be honest.
I mean, you've got to get the point. Gold could go out of fashion, and nobody could ever wear it again.
Glenn, hang on. Let me just talk here, okay? All I'm saying is this: there's only value in Bitcoin because people chose to believe there's value in Bitcoin. That's it.
Yeah, that's true.
When actually,
but it's a store for things.
It's a store of value. You can't do anything with it.
You can. It's useful for transferring money. Well, I'd say the main use of it that puts it above other financial instruments is the ease of transferring money across borders. Because even though it's easy these days to transfer money within a country, from my bank to your bank, easy enough. Dodgy. But if you want to transfer money from one country to another, difficult. Yeah, well, you say dodgy, but what about the number of countries where the government is the one that's dodgy and that they're preventing people from transferring money because they themselves are criminals?
Yeah, that's bad as well.
Exactly, but
I'm not condoning. Listen, hang on a second. I'm not condoning one in favour of the other one. I'm just saying they're both dodgy. You seem to be in favour of enabling these criminals to transfer this dodgy, fancy, was it fairy dust between borders, and that's not good, is it?
I want to see financial innovation. I want to see things improve and change within the financial system, which, as you know, is a big, a big den of lies and iniquity, and has been for a very long time. And the whole point about cryptocurrency is to encourage innovation and new types of products that get around the powers that be and allow the people to forge their own way in the financial world without so many restrictions. That's the utopian
You
vision.
are enabling criminality. That's all you're doing. Let's be honest. Bitcoin is used for this, basically. People trading it. What use is that to any economy? People trading something that doesn't exist. It's like, what?
Speculation doesn't have a particularly useful social function. It's true, but you could say the same for trading anything.
So you got either got people trading, fairy dust, or you got people dodging, in illegal or taken by illegal criminal activity and using Bitcoin as the currency that they swap launder money in. And so you got you got fairy dust traders or criminals. That's all it is.
You know what you sound like? You sound like those guys in the early days of the internet, and we both remember them.
No,
We're old enough to remember.
No.
And they were talking exactly like you. The internet.
I can see the use of the internet. No, I love the internet.
Look at pornography.
No.
To buy drugs.
Hang on.
No use for anything else.
No, hang on. Listen, I could see the internet was going to be big. I mean, I could see what is communication online, of course. But Bitcoin, people even started pretending they're going to start buying things with Bitcoin. That's never going to happen. It's ridiculous.
The point is, Bitcoin is at the vanguard. There are all the other hundreds of cryptocurrencies.
Exactly.
Which do cleverer things than Bitcoin.
Most of them are scams.
Yeah, a lot of them are scams, but that's the same with the early internet, when the pornographers made up a large chunk of the World Wide Web because nobody else had got their act together yet. But the potential was there, and as you say, you could see that potential. The potential is also here. There are numerous little cryptocurrencies that are doing incredibly clever things. They just haven't made it big yet. It takes time. It takes decades. But you'll see I was right, and then you'll be sorry. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's how it's going to work.
I won't be sorry at all. Literally, I can see more people being scammed into buying Bitcoin and maybe holding it. Let's look at that Plan B. What's his plan? He's hilarious, that guy. Plan B. Is it Plan B?
Yeah, the guy who came up with the stock to flow model of Bitcoin.
He had me convinced. He had me convinced for like a couple of weeks.
I know he did. You used to love it.
For a couple of weeks, I was convinced by a couple of weeks, and then I realised that nothing fell outside his model. I just realised whatever price Bitcoin was, that was well within the confines of his model. So even after that, so it was 40% drop or 50% drop after a couple of days. That was okay. That's within the model.
It's all within it's exactly the model.
I can't think of any. I can't think of any model, right, where something goes wrong by 50% and it's still fine.
Yeah,
if you applied that to like vaccinations, for example, you wouldn't complete this in the clinical trials. If 50% of the people who took your drug, keeled over and died, it wouldn't work. You wouldn't get the pass on that. So that's ridiculous.
It is. I'm not a fan of the model, and I haven't been for a very long time for the reasons you're saying. It's just
look at this.
The model is based on incorrect assumptions ultimately, and so if a model's based on like most models in economics are based on incorrect assumptions, it means that they're just basically almost worthless. So yeah, that's how I feel about.
Someone breaking into your Bitcoin storage there. I can hear some alarms in the background.
Yeah, that was the Bitcoin alarm. I've got to go to the safe room now.
This is just released. Where was this released? Yesterday actually. Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey said on Monday it was hard to see how Bitcoin had any intrinsic value, and he cautioned over its use as a means of payment. He said, "I have to be honest. To be honest, though, him saying that means probably makes me more bullish on it.
Exactly.
I have to be honest.
That's how I felt.
It is hard to see that Bitcoin has what we tend to call intrinsic value. It may have intrinsic value in the same sense that people want it." He said he was very... if people want it, that gives it value, you fool, doesn't it?
Exactly. Like gold. Exactly my point about gold.
Does he not understand? That's quite worrying, right? That he is the governor of the Bank of England, and he doesn't understand the market is based on supply and demand. If people demand something, that gives it value. People will supply it, If there's lack of supply, the price of it goes up. You must know that, surely.
He's stuck within a paradigm, in a very narrow kind of range of thinking, because what he's saying is it's hard to see how Bitcoin has intrinsic value, though it may have extrinsic value in the sense that people want it. So he does accept that supply and demand means that it has extrinsic value, but it doesn't have intrinsic value in the sense that it's not something that you need in your life, I guess, is what he's saying. But I've already made that point about gold, and I could make that same point about many, many other things that people trade. There are some things that do have intrinsic value, like, for example, copper. When you trade copper is an extremely useful thing for making things in the real world. So that inarguably has intrinsic value. But when you're looking at monetary units, whether it's Bitcoin or gold or any fiat currency, you have to, once you start looking into, does this thing actually have intrinsic value? Bear in mind that all fiat currencies are not backed by anything these days. They're just, as we know, printed in endless amounts if that's what the central banks desire. So ironically, the Bank of England governor is in charge of a currency, the pound, that itself doesn't really have intrinsic value.
It's the same as Bitcoin. I suppose. It's trust, isn't it? Okay. Anything else?
Trust, exactly. It's trust. But the thing is, Bitcoin's trust. The brilliant thing about Bitcoin, as you know, is that its trust is based on the trustlessness of its network. In other words, because the network is based on computer code that keeps it secure, that's where the trust comes in, and that's why millions of people trust Bitcoin, because they know that there is no one person who can bring down the network. It's secure within itself.
Right.
So that it's a bit kind of obviously that's a bit intangible to understand.
Anything else?
Anything else? What? I'm trying to get philosophical here. I'm trying to broaden your mind. I'm trying to expand your horizons with my intangibility talk. The point is, Bitcoin is trustworthy because it can't be broken. It's a secure network, right? That's the worth that it has, I guess, the intrinsic value that it has. Whereas, as you say, a fiat currency is about trust in a government. Do we trust governments? Sometimes not. So,
Okay.
There you go.
Any other news? Anything worth looking at? Anything else interesting? Apart from discussion on Bitcoin?
Yeah, there's more bad news for Bitcoin. Want to hear some more?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. BitMEX, one of the biggest exchanges in the world, has been indicted by the U.S. government, accused of flouting U.S. banking laws while serving American customers. Basically, BitMEX offers derivatives of the kind that FCA have just banned, but they did it in an unregulated way. They're based in the Seychelles, so they were... I mean, even though they didn't, as far as we know, scam customers or anything like that, they were running, a derivatives business. You could buy and sell crypto derivatives in the normal way. And the guy who runs it, Arthur Hayes, is very highly respected in a lot of the financial industry. But nonetheless, because they're outside regulation, they've broken various rules, allegedly. And now the US government is coming down on them like a ton of bricks. So there'll be a case coming there.
We're not going to allow criminals to trade in fairy dust. It's ridiculous.
Why can't people trade whatever the hell they want?
Criminals profiting from fairy dust.
This is just somebody saying to you, I will sell you this product at this price, and then you can sell it back on the exchange at this price. It's not a scam. It's not a Ponzi scheme. It's just
what do I do
a trading
with it?
exchange.
It's like
trading financial instruments.
It's almost
much like the legal regulated ones. The only difference is it's not regulated by the US government.
It's almost like trying to explain to my father, really, what Bitcoin is. And I realised I'd fail. And so, to me, it's pointless. He said, what do you mean? What do you use it for? And my father, it's barely on the internet,
Yeah.
He falls off it quite a lot. And he can't get back on. I have to help him back onto it. But, I think if you can't explain it to your parents, then what's the point?
Well, if you can't explain it to your parents, maybe your parents are missing out on something, I always think. It's like, I know there are two arguments.
Not missing out on trading.
If you can't explain it to your grandmother, then it's not a real thing, is one argument. But I would say if you can't explain it to your grandmother, then maybe you can find a financial advantage that your grandmother's not going to be able to take advantage of.
If I could explain it to my grandmother, that'd be quite a scary concept. She's dead.
Right.
That would, be nuts. I would have a special, a skill if I could do that. That would be very impressive.
There's a cryptocurrency.
I wouldn't need to trade Bitcoin if I could actually communicate with my grandmother.
You need to buy some of the afterlife cryptocurrency, which is available on an unregulated exchange near you. Allows you to do that. Communicate with the undead and the dead. One more piece of bad news.
Go on, then, quick. You got 4 minutes. Go.
All right. The US, the Department of Justice has warned that the emergence of Bitcoin and similar cryptocurrencies is a growing threat to US national security. The Attorney General William Barr called it the first raindrops of an oncoming storm. Basically, he's talking about what you were talking about earlier, the use by criminals of cryptocurrencies. He says current terrorist use of cryptocurrency may represent the first raindrops. It was all part of a report from their Cyber Digital Task Force that found Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies pose an emerging challenge to law enforcement activities. So really, I suppose this all hammers home the thing that I'm most worried about at the moment, which I've been worried about for years. And I've been trying to tell whenever I speak at cryptocurrency conferences, or did before coronavirus, I'd be surrounded by tech geniuses on the panels that I sat on, and they would generally be incredibly bullish. And I would say things like, well, there's always a chance that the US and UK governments and the European government will just shut down the entire thing and just ban it all. And they go, no, they can't do that. We will find ways around it. They can't do that. And I'll say they can do that because they control the fiat on-ramps. They control the exchanges and the platforms that allow you to transfer dollars and pounds into cryptocurrencies in the first place. So while the cryptocurrency geeks can control cryptocurrencies within their own little world, what they can't control is the means to transfer pounds into cryptocurrencies. To do that, you need a proper exchange or platform that is regulated in the UK, that has banks involved, that has money exchange businesses like Visa and MasterCard involved, because otherwise you can't turn your pounds into something else, can you? They just stay as pounds. So that's the problem that these crypto geniuses have, is that now that the US government and the British government are going, I'm not sure about this crypto business, we're not sure we like it, that's a serious threat to the entire industry.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, well, of course it is. Yeah, they can shut down anything they want to. They can just highly regulate it. Yeah, I mean, people think, but that's the deluded Bitcoin holders for you, though, isn't it? They'd be like, you can't. It's impenetrable.
Yeah.
They just highly regulate it. So
it's impenetrable within itself. Like, it would still exist. It's just, they can't actually ban Bitcoin itself. The network would still exist, but if people could no longer transfer dollars into Bitcoin because it had been regulated out of existence,
if they said to you,
then it's not much use, is it?
If we see any transfer of dollars to Bitcoin, you will end up in Guantanamo Bay for life. Then you soon start to see the popularity of Bitcoin trading going down in the US.
Yeah, you would. Which is why I'm, as you know, I'm in and out of Bitcoin. I'm in and out of other cryptocurrencies. I make money from them, but I'm certainly not holding on for dear life, as they call it.
There we are.
I'm not doing that.
You've come onto my way of thinking now.
I've always been a dirty trader, as you like to call me. I don't believe in anything. I don't believe that the future is knowable.
I don't believe in anything. Would you believe in me? I'm here.
I believe in you. I don't believe that anything in the future is knowable. So, these Bitcoin people who say Bitcoin will definitely take over. I don't believe that's knowable.
It is. Next week we'll be chatting again, probably. That's knowable. And death and taxes. There you are.
All right, they're knowable. Yes.
Well, we won't be chatting unless it's death comes first, or I'm taxed to oblivion. One of the two. So, barring death and a highly taxed regime, which will prevent me from, will make me sell my computer and everything, then we'll talk next week. Glenn,
all right.
Speaking next week.
It's been a pleasure.
Okay, it's time for the top 5 most followed companies on Vox Markets in the last 24 hours. They are at 5. Polarian Imaging, good move by Polarian today. At 4, Salt Lake Potash, presentation out there worth watching, a video on there as well, definitely worth watching. At 3, it's Glen Gold. At 2, in fact, what are the moves here? Polarian is up at 17%, Salt Lake is down a tad at 0.7%, Glen Gold down 5% at 19.5. At 2, Ferro Alloy Resources, FAR ticker there. That's up 4.2% at 9.1 pence. And at number 1, most followed companies, Orosur Mining, that's up just shy of 1% at 32.25 pence. Okay, top 5 most liked RNSs are as follows. At 5, Barrett Developments trading statement. At 4, Blanco Resources Holdings Company. At 3, Anglo-Asian Mining, Q3 2020 production and operations review. At 2, Iconic Labs, update on Joe Media Ireland. And at 1, Salt Lake Potash, new corporate presentation right there. Like I say, worth checking out. It's a good video. The presentation is very good, and there's a good video there, link to that. Check that out. Thanks for listening. Muchos appreciados.
The Vox Markets Podcast with Justin Waite. Nothing in this podcast is intended as investment advice, and the people in this podcast may hold positions in the stocks they talk about. Do not buy anything based solely on a tip or recommendation. Please do your own research.